the two players you lost are going to be former five-star recruits contending for those positions. So I guess my question is, how do you keep the sort of momentum you guys had entering the spring going through this quarantine?
Well, obviously it's new for everybody, but the leadership of the three guys you mentioned is the first thing. And, those guys do a great job telling everybody what they need to do, what they need to get done. We've stayed in constant communication so that everybody's on the same page. We talk just about every day. And I think just working through it and staying in constant communication with what they need to do physically and then what they need to do mentally to keep learning, that's the challenge. And I think they've done a great job so far.
Great. Next up is Bill Landis from The Athletic with Patrick Murphy on deck. Bill?
Thanks, Jerry. Greg, another question for you. Kind of like Wyatt Davis seems to pop up on a lot of these early, preseason lists, just sort of the best players in the country to watch, sort of regardless of position. And I'm wondering, when you evaluate his season last year, what are some of the things that you thought he did well, and as he moves forward here as a guy who decided to come back and not go to the NFL, where he can improve in his next season?
The best thing about Wyatt, the thing that he did the best and why everybody's talking about it, is because he's physical. He tries to destroy people. He doesn't try to just position block or just get the job done. He wants to try to destroy you physically every single play that he's in there. And while that's a blessing, to answer the second part of your question, that's a curse too at times, because sometimes he gets out of the framework of his technique. Or sometimes in pass protection, he tries to be a little too aggressive, and they get him off balance, they get him out of whack, and he gives up some pressures and things. So we're trying to keep the same mentality that he has physically, and then just trying to fine-tune and perfect his technique so he stays within the framework of the technique he needs to be a good offensive lineman while keeping the physical play. So that's the best thing I can tell you.
Thanks.
Next up, Patrick Murphy from 24/7 Sports with Tim May on deck. Patrick?
Yeah, my question's for Coach Washington. When we talked to you in the spring, you talked about the number of upperclassmen linebackers you have and the versatility. You can do some different things with them. I'm curious what you guys were able to accomplish with those guys, and then how not having spring has impacted maybe what you plan to do with various things with them.
Yeah, that's a good question. So first off, I think fortunate for us, we had a lot of guys back, so we were able to ramp up our install first few practices. So we actually saw quite a broad scope of different things, and some things we were experimenting with. So we had footage of that. Now, obviously, you're not going to get as great a read as if you had 15 practices, but it was good to see what we saw. Obviously, there's things we weren't able to, especially for younger guys, we weren't able to see a ton of reps at, but get a ton of reps at it. But we were able to see some things. The benefit for us out of this whole period, silver lining, if you will, is we have had a guys that played a lot of football. So, you know what they can do. You have an idea of what they can do. Their minds, now their mindset shift is, we're approaching the game from a mental standpoint. We're approaching it from a day-to-day, training standpoint. So without taking the hits that you necessarily have in spring. So looking at it through those lenses, I think, a guy like Justin Hilliard, for example, or a guy like Pete or Tuff, or a guy like Barron, those guys can come back maybe with a little more spring in their step. So that's our mentality. We're just trying to find ways to continue to get those guys exposed as much as we can to what'll help them with what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Next up, Tim May from Lettermen Row with Steve Hellwagon on deck. Tim?
Yeah, thank you very much. Coach Wilson, what is the most feasible kind of time period that you think would work to get a team back into shape that missed spring and is missing, as much as they're working on their own, missing these off-season workouts under Mickey Marotti and with you guys occasionally. But what is like a window that you think would work for teams to get back into playing shape, so to speak, before a season starts? I'm talking about like based on like a week time frame type thing.
Yeah, we've had some discussions, although like so much right now, there's so much uncertainty. And Tim, with you guys too. Now, thinking about you guys, I know some furloughs going on, and some guys are going through some tough times. So we always appreciate working with you guys, the coverage you bring, and just saying prayers for everybody to stay healthy and we get through this together and get the jobs stabilized. And appreciate the guys that are fighting for us out there on those daily jobs that are doing some things so we can kind of have some degree of normalcy. But we're looking back to get normal. And your question is how they get the football team normal. Right now they're lifting and working out. When you get back, I'm sure you always have to follow the guidelines that whatever the school and the governor and everyone's going to put in place about, getting started. There's going to be some guidelines that the Big Ten NCAA has. But I'm sure we'll have some degree of testing to kind of figure out what conditioning level, because you're going to need a few weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks of conditioning level just to get your team back in running shape and get their legs and their stamina and all those things back up to speed. Typically, we've had about 3 weeks of preseason, pushing 4 in game week. That would probably maybe get down to 2 weeks. I know sometimes there's been a lot of thoughts of contact and player protection. Do we hit too much? But I know Coach Stud and Coach Washington tell you as line guys, we have to hit enough that they are contact safe and they know how to hit. So I think, Tim, we've looked at maybe, a 6-week scenario, a couple, 3 weeks of conditioning and a couple, 3 weeks of practice. It's between 6 or 8, but I think we'll just wait and see as we get through April, into May, and more than anything, when can we get our groups together? And time's going to tell. So we're not rushing it. I know the kids are working out hard. I know Mick will get them checked out. And whatever that magic date is, you're probably looking at a 6 to 8 week window that I think we'll probably all be working on to be ready for a college football season.
Thanks, man. Next up, Steve Hellwagon from 24/7 Sports with Lori Schmidt on deck. Steve?
Hey, guys. Thanks a lot for taking a moment here. For Coach Stud, your tackle position that you guys got open there looks like 3 of the names, Nicholas, Petit-Frere, DeJuan Jones, possibly the freshman, Paris Johnson. I guess what's it going to take for one of those guys or somebody else to step up and take that job? And what are you seeing out of those guys in particular as they were fighting, I guess, to become that starter?
It's a great question. And I'll tell you, the first 3 days of spring practice were unbelievable to see those guys go out there and compete. And to answer your question, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take someone that wants to go out there and grab that position by the you-know-what and say that they want it. Because that's I would have liked to see DeJuan and even Nick. Nick's played a little bit for us, and he's been in some games, so he's got a little more experience. But what I saw out of DeJuan and Paris, 2 young guys, in 3 days of spring practice, I couldn't believe it, how advanced, how far DeJuan has come, and how advanced and mature Paris is for a freshman. So it's going to take those guys right now. Who's going to buy in? Who's going to do what it takes? Who's going to go grab that spot and say that they want it? Because I believe all 3 of them are capable. So it's going to be fun to see them work. They're working hard now. They're getting better now. They're studying film now. So I know they're not getting the reps, but it's been a good time to slow down, to get film with them and study the playbook with them, learn things with them. They're working on their individual technique on their own. And then when we get back together, it's going to be a full court press and to go fight for the job. But it's going to be exciting, I can tell you that.
Yep. Thanks, Coach.
Next up, Lori Schmidt from USA Today Buckeye Wire with Jeremy Birmingham on deck. Lori?
Thanks, guys. I hope you're remaining safe and healthy. This is for any of you. Kerry Coons earlier today talked about Ryan Day's Circle of Care. Could you tell us a little bit about what that is and what it means to you to be part of a program that has something like that?
You want to take this, Kevin? Yeah, I'll go quick at it. One, to me, there's so much that this institution and the administration and Gene Smith has provided, not just for our athletes, but for all the athletes. And, when Ryan came in and saw that, you got, our logo is the Big Block Go, and we talked to our kids like, hey, you're dead in the center of this thing, and we're going to surround you with our Big Block Go of care, of taking care of you medically with our team docs and our trainers, taking care of that with sports science and all the resources we have to track our guys on sleep and rest and recovery and how much exertion and how much they're running and how fast they're running, because then Coach Mick will use that to determine what he's doing in the weight room and what we provide with the weight staff. Coach Mick will use that information, share that with Coach Washington, Coach Stud, myself, all the coaches, how much running, and sometimes that determines the next practice and things we do to prevent hamstring injuries. And we do a lot with hydration, not just for hams and cramps, but for concussion, because your brain's 90% water. So we do a great deal of testing in sports science that Mick uses in the weight room. It goes to Coach Day's big deal has been mental health, and as Coach Day's been on the forefront within our community, he's been on the forefront within our building with our team of providing resources mentally with our guys and all the things they need to deal with, the stresses of college and playing and being away from home and school and relationships and getting their life on track. And, as you keep going around the horn, we got nutrition, all the resources, nutrition, down into academics and how well our guys have done in school, into Coach Stamper's world of Real Life Wednesday. From Real Life Wednesday into our branding program and platform and what we do to get our guys set to promote themselves in using Ohio State and the brand to help their careers, not just in professional football, which is happening this week with a great opportunity for some of these kids on Thursday and Friday and Saturday, but also just branding themselves to make it into professional lives outside of football. All the benefits we got with Buckeye Benefits, the Nike contract, and then we finish up with football. And you go around, there's 12 bulletin points, and you're in the middle, and this is all the ways we're going to try to touch you. It's a great sell in recruiting. It's a great sell for our program. Coach Day took everything we did, put it in a neat package, and as a staff, we're all on board and sell that. I was just with Coach Washington yesterday, recruit doing it. I know it's big for Coach Stud's group. You're talking to three coaches now that player development, player welfare, it's critical. It is for everyone, and it's critical for our guys, and it is a huge opportunity we have, a huge blessing, and it's the way that Coach Day has kind of implemented that philosophy or that way of presenting it to our team and to our recruits. It's outstanding.
Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. And, again, stay healthy.
Well done, Coach Wilson. If I can remind everyone to mute, please, unless you're talking. Next up, Jeremy Birmingham from Lettermen Row with Tony Girdman on deck. Jeremy.
Thanks, guys. Hey, Kevin, question for you here. As the offensive coordinator with three quarterbacks that have really not played much college football, and two they've not played at all, how concerning is it for you, depth-wise, to lose this spring and summer months for guys like Jack Miller, C.J. Stroud, and even Gunnar Hope?
Great question. And I got to wrap up. And, Jerry, I appreciate comments, but one of our big circle of cares is media relations and all our contacts with the media and working with you guys. So, Jerry, I fumbled on that one. I apologize. But in the circle of care, our ability and the way we teach our guys to deal with media and use all the great media resources, which you guys are a huge part of. So I left that one out there, Jerry. I'm sorry. And sorry to you guys. But that's difficult. Like some of those offensive tackles, they were off to a great start. I thought those quarterbacks were, but you need those plays. We'll pick it back up. The quarterback world gets a lot also in the out-of-season timing that we get. We're going to miss some of that now. The spring ball's over. Right now our guys will be in finals. They get a couple weeks off. We come back in May and June, they'll start working together as we come off of the pandemic and as the restrictions kind of get eased up. We don't know where that's going to be because, Jeremy, a lot of that time is in the summer months. Now, they've missed that time on the field. They did look very natural. They did look like they have a chance to be really good players. That's lost time. We'll do everything we can in preseason to make it up. We'll do everything we can in summer, although summer's difficult because you really can't do team. But that's going to be a concern. We'll have to do it every year. In college, we're replacing guys. Coach Washington's got a good group back, but young players coming in. I think one of the keys to coming through this is as we stay healthy and put everyone in the right position health-wise, how we continue to develop. One of the big development pieces is practice. We've missed that. How do we make that up? We're not going to be able to practice, but I think it'll be very unique as Coach Day and Coach Dennis, Coach Hardline, all of us on offense, the defensive coaches with Coach Combs. We use all the teaching tools and do everything we can to abide by the guidelines, but keep developing these programs. This program's been successful with development. It's Coach Mick in the weight room, but it's these coaches in their meeting rooms and on the field. And as we get through summer, it'll be interesting how we close that gap because that'll be one of the keys to us having a great season.
Next up, Tony Girdman from the Ozone with Austin Ward on deck. Tony?
Hey, Al, do you have a depth chart right now? Like, are you able to tell us, like, who is where? I mean, I know everybody was everywhere in the spring. Do you have a fixed depth chart at this point?
No, I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's hard to make that statement because you got 3 practices. So, yeah, and it's hard to change what was with 3 practices. So, to answer your question, no, I don't have we have our thoughts, but I wouldn't, I'm not going to make a declaration at this point. Hopefully with the practices we do have that Kevin alluded to can help bring some clarity and some things. If there's anything outside of what already was. But I do know this, the younger guys, like the guys like Taraji who are growing up, Dallas Gann, Kayvon Pope, those guys, they're going to be critical to our success. So, they'll get a lot of playing time. They'll make an impact. But I couldn't give you much more than that. That's what we're anticipating. So,
all right, thank you. Next up, Austin Ward from Lettermen Row with Dan Hope on deck. Austin?
Hey, thanks, guys. Really appreciate you doing this. Kevin, there's been a little talk with Coach Day about the value of having Justin Fields back for his second year, and I've asked you about this with other quarterbacks you've had throughout your career, that you're always willing to mold the offense. As you guys get a second stab at that with Justin and know more about him, where do you sort of envision taking this into his second year?
You looked very impressive coming through winter in the couple practices we have. And, of course, he had a great year last year. I thought, again, with Ryan's background, Coach Jursich was here at the time with Coach Ennis, now with Corey here. Last year, I think sometimes because we were pretty solid at line, JK at running back, we didn't maybe force him to make some of the things that maybe the year before we just saw Dwayne do, and relying a lot on Dwayne's skill set. So I just think maybe you see him be a little bit more complete. Maybe Ryan, pushing the pass game, maybe a little bit more. Not that we didn't. I mean, he had 51 touchdowns last year. We had a running back run for over 2,000 yards, and the quarterback had 51 touchdowns, and it's all credit to those 5 guys up front that make it all go. So, we can be, I don't know if you say we're a little bit more wide open. We've been one of the most dynamic offenses in college ball. I think you look at the 3 years that Coach Day and myself have been here, the quarterbacks have, 47, 54, and 51 touchdowns accounted for. So, Justin, we need to keep him healthy, and we got to keep bringing those young quarterbacks along like Jeremy had alluded to. I don't think we just, throw everything at it, but I think Coach Day will trust him more. And I guess the playbook technically opens up, although it's always been kind of open. I just think you'll see him maybe being just even more on target, more accurate. He looked very, very impressive those first 3 days of practice. Now we'll have to get that back up to speed coming through the issues we're dealing with. But it's exciting maybe to see what he can do. Like we said a year ago, he's about as talented a young man as I've ever seen back there catching that snap. So we're excited to see what this year happens and where he goes for.
Thanks.
Next up, Dan Hope from 11 Warriors with Bill Rabinowitz on deck. Dan?
Hey, guys. Thanks for doing this. Greg, you were asked before about the right tackle competition, but specifically for Paris Johnson being an early enrollee, how much of a setback do you think it is for him to not have these spring practices, and what are the things that you want him to work on while he's away from campus so that he has a chance when he does get back?
To answer your question, yes, it is a setback. But, we're all dealing with setbacks. So we can talk about it as being a setback or we can move forward. That's what I told all these guys. Having them out there practicing as an offensive lineman, there's no doubt they need thousands of reps before they can perfect the things that they're asked to do. But this kid there's a little bit of difference about him. His maturity level and the way he attacks things lead me to believe that he's got that opportunity. And the second part of the question, we're focusing on all the techniques that he needs to get to be able to go take that position. Physically, he's done a tremendous job. His coming in early, and that the weightlifting part that he had in the winter was unbelievable. Transformed him. I think it's going to put him on the edge of being able to do it physically, and that's the first thing. So once we get past that, it's just continuing to refine his techniques, continually to mentally review the film, learn our offense inside and out, because those tackles are making pretty important calls in the pass protection game. So once he gets that thing down mentally, and each day continues to work his technique, then again, when we get back, we can full court press it, and then get into 2 days or however much time we're going to have to prepare, and then go from there. But the things I've seen lead me to believe that he has a really good chance.
Thanks, Greg.
Yep.
Next up, Bill Rabinowitz from the Columbus Dispatch with Nathan Baird on deck. Bill?
Al, could you kind of give your take on how Malik Harrison fits in the NFL, what kind of prospect he is? Stud, if you could do the same for Jonah Jackson. And Stud, if you could also just address the left guard position. Is Harry Miller the guy that you're looking at penciled in right now, or how does that shake out?
Yeah, Jonah Jackson first. I think he's going to be outstanding. The best thing about him is just one of the things that I thought was a great thing with Pat and Billy both. And a lot of people don't know this, but Jonah can be an elite center in my opinion. And a lot of the guys at that level have asked about that, of him doing that. So there's a guy that can be elite at guard and center, and I think that makes him more valuable. But his attention to detail, his mental toughness, all those things about him, he's just a disciplined guy. I think he's going to play a long time. And that multiple spot thing is going to be outstanding for him. Somebody's going to get a great player there. When you talk about the left guard spot, Harry Miller, Gavin Tupp, Matt Jones, all three of those guys are going to be working at that spot. Harry did a great job in the spring. In the short time, he had 3 practices at it. Looked really, really good. Matt Jones opened my eyes a little bit. I think he's got a certain maturity level now that it might be time for him to play and start to contribute. And then Gavin Tupp, he had the little foot thing he dealt with, so we didn't get to see him. But I'm anxious now that he's had this time off to heal. We got 3 guys that I think are going to be able to compete for that job.
And Al, about Malik?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, to hearing Stud talk, and hearing Kevin as well, you look at a guy like Malik, I feel like how he helped himself was, I thought he developed a great amount of skill, in particular with his hands, and it takes a lot of reps. And fortunate for Malik, he wasn't injured, but he didn't miss any reps this year in practice or in game. And so I think what you saw a player starting to hit his stride and starting to, enhance his skill, get better. And I thought, because of that, I think his trajectory is headed upward, man. I think he'll fit in any scheme. I think he has a great amount of skill with his hands. I think he has a football IQ. I think he can cover. I think he showed a lot of that in the Senior Bowl, and he can run. And so I feel optimistic, but I believe no matter where he goes, I think he'll prove his value once he gets to the team, because he'll be able to do a wide array of things, and starting with their hands. And that, for us in our room, and I'm a D-line guy at heart, so I think the mentality of a lineman is a great amount of skill, because the margin of error is so small. So, you got to make sure your foot's right. You got to make sure your hand placement's right. You got to make sure your vertical leverage is set. You got to do all these things. And so our mentality in the room, in terms of when we take on a block, is as detailed as you can make it at the position. And I think he'll be able to I think he'll thrive in any system because of that mentality that we were able to kind of forge this season, if that makes any sense. He's a very talented. He's always been athletic. But I think he showed his ability to defeat blocks this year and make plays. And I wish I had another crack at it, because I think you would have saw progress even more. So I know this: whatever team he goes to, his skill set will allow him to fit in many different roles. And as we all know, that's the name of the game in that league. And so I think he'll do great.
Thanks, Al. Thanks, Doug.
Yep.
Next up, Nathan Baird from Cleveland.com with Doug Lesmerises on deck. Nathan?
All right, for
Coach Studrawa. Sometimes when guys come in, 5-star guys, highly recruited, and they don't play as much right away, people have an assumption that they're behind. So is Nick Petit-Frere behind where you expect him to be at this point in his career? And what does he need to do between now and this fall to be in a better position to be the starting right tackle?
No, I think this is Nick's time. I think he's finally got his weight up to where it needs to be. He's finally got his strength up to where it needs to be. And I think he's finally learned inside and out what we're doing on the offense. And so I think it's his time to shine. I was excited with what he did in those 3 days. Like I said, we had to get his weight up consistently up to 305 and 310. And now he's done that through the winter. And that's allowed him to be able to do it physically. He was a little bit light last year at times and struggled to keep that weight up, so getting that up was critical for him. And then all the reps that he got last year, he got to start that game at Northwestern, did a good job when Thayer went down, and then got a lot of snaps late in games in the second half, and I think that's what he needed. He is a rep guy. When they say rep guy, it's a guy that needs to do it and do it and do it. And all that he got last year late in games, I think he's got the confidence now. He walks around with a little bit different swagger, talks with a little bit more confidence. So I don't think he's behind it all. Actually, I think he's caught up. And I think it might be his time to shine. That's what I'm hoping for.
Next up, Doug Lesmerises from Cleveland.com with Joey Kaufman on deck. Doug?
Yeah, I have a question for Al. I already asked Coach Johnson about this, Al, but I wanted your perspective. Since you recruited Zack Harrison and got to know him so well, just when you recruited him, what you thought of him as a prospect, what he did as a freshman, what do you think might be out there for Zack as a sophomore now, as it seems like his role will increase?
Yeah, that's a great question. My take on Zack was, number one, he was highly intelligent. He was very bright, very engaging. He had a passion for football. I mean, you'd hear stories about him meeting with Dreg Schroeder, his high school head coach, and he'd be meeting with him one-on-one, going over, coverage concepts. I mean, things that typical D linemen wouldn't ask. I mean, I was a defensive lineman. I wasn't asking about coverage. I could care less at high school. And so I thought he was unique in that way. I saw him run track. I mean, I saw him run a 10-7, 100-meter with sneakers on in the rain. So, I mean, that's for a kid that size. So he can run. I always knew he had the physical attributes. And then his character. He was a leader on his team. He cared about his team, those things. So I had a high opinion of Zack as a person and a player. And so, I think what you saw this year was from game one to game whatever, you saw a guy fundamentally grow. And again, it goes back to repetition. It goes back to, my earlier statement about the linebackers, the older guys, the 5th and 4th year guys, where their impact may not be as dramatic, but a guy like Zack, him missing spring is a big deal, and granted, everything's in perspective. Like, there's bigger social issues going on right now in football. I mean, there's people losing jobs, people losing their lives. I mean, this is a big thing going on. So I don't want to blow it out of proportion, but it is impactful to the development of a young player. D-line and O-line are a skilled position. You're right on the front of the guy. So, like, if you have a bad step, you're exposed like that. You don't have time to miss it. So a guy like Zack, you saw him at the end of the year, he started playing really good football. And guys who know football, you notice his footwork, you notice his hands, and all the work. Coach Johnson's the best on the planet at what he does. And so you saw him start to act out the things that he should have done. So I think in time his role is going to grow fast, because not only does he have the talent, he has the drive, he has the passion, all those things that are important for any great elite player. And I'm not gassing him up, I'm not pumping him up. I'm just stating the fact. I mean, that's how important he is. That's how important the game is to him, and his teammates are to him. And so I couldn't. There's not a better kid, a young kid, that you would build a program around like Zack than Zack, in my opinion. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was great. I'll follow up with another one for you, Al.
we know assistant coaches move around, and every assistant coach has gone through this. But when you're, heading into year 2 at a program, how do you change as a recruiter? How do you feel any different when you're maybe at a program for a second year? Can you feel yourself when you're recruiting now? And I know everything's screwed up right now, but how do you feel different maybe recruiting now for Ohio State as opposed to when you first got here and were part of this staff?
Yeah, for me personally, I've had a unique, and I'm sure, Kevin and Stud, they can weigh in. They've been at it longer than I, well beyond the years I've had. But this is the first time I've been at a place 2 years since 2016. So every year I've been at a different place. You can educate yourself on what the school can offer a player or a student athlete. You can educate them on, facilities, different exposures. You can educate them on the history, but it's hard to educate them on, the actual program, like the people that are living and breathing there, because you just got there. And so I think my time last year when I first got to Ohio State, to be honest, it was difficult. From where I was coming from, and a month earlier I'm talking to the kid at one school, and a month later I'm at a new school. So that's not necessarily the most natural thing. And so it was, that was, not being full of crap, that's difficult, but this year going in, I know the team. I'm a part of the team. I know, Kevin Wilson deeper. I know Greg. So if I'm recruiting an offensive lineman, I can tell them with everything in my soul that he's not going to play for a better coach. Like, I can tell him that, look that kid in the eye and mean it. And so people pick that up. People are very, people are smart. They can read people. You can sense those things. And same thing, talking to a tight end. I'm joint. We do a lot of group recruiting here, which is probably the reason why, I think we do well as a staff, because we work together. And I'm in the process now, with a couple players that me and Kevin both are involved with, and I can't name names or anything, but I can just tell you this, man. You're far more effective, when you're able to speak from experience as opposed to, what you know or what you read. I'm not theorizing. I'm talking about experience, and that's different, and it creates a better vibe, if you will, when you're talking to young student athletes and families. So that's the biggest thing, the biggest difference from me from year 1 to year 2. So.
Great, folks. We're going to have to end the call on this last reporter. So we'll close it out with a question from Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Dispatch.
This is a question for Greg. Greg, usually you have offensive linemen who are having different diets. They're trying to gain weight. Nick Petit-Frere has been a guy like that in the past. DeJuan Jones on the other side of the coin is somebody who's maybe had to drop weight. With your guys scattered across the country, like, is there at all concern about just the diet they would be like normally going through and the calories they would be wanting to normally hit, and just kind of the quality of food?
Oh yeah, you hit it on the head. There's no doubt. With me, that's part of being a lineman. Like you said, they got to gain, they got to lose. They're fat guys, all that stuff. So we deal with it all the time. The good thing is, from Coach Marotti to the nutritionist to everybody that we have in that department, we're in constant communication with them. And I think, and I talk to them about it all the time. What are you eating? How much do you weigh? Check your weight. We make sure they all weigh in on a regular basis, and they're keeping up. They know what their goal weights are through Mick.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Lettermen Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buckeye IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.